Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday morning. As you all know, we are here today for the official launch of When Gods Don't Matter, a collection of poems by Jagdeep Singh. 4 years ago, on 7th November 2021, it was right here at this very serene poolside of Clark's Amir that he launched his first anthology, My Epitaph. On that note, I would like to express a heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Apurv Kumar, Miss Timmy Kumar, and the entire team of Hotel Clark Samir for being such gracious hosts yet again. Recently, I came across a piece on poetry in the age of AI. It said, AI can rhyme like bells can chime, write you a line and take no time. But be not fooled, it's got no heart. And what's a poet without that? Well, today we are here to celebrate precisely that, the heart behind the words from a man who has spent decades helping others find their words as a PR professional, only to now remind us that the truest ones often come from within. In his latest poetry anthology, When Gods Don't Matter, the verses traverse the intimate and the infinite, the anguish of the COVID years, the ache of unrequited love, the nostalgia that quietly breaks your heart, and the humor in life's daily absurdities. They are confessional yet courageous, rooted in Hemingway's belief that truth lies at the heart of creative writing. So for the official launch of the book today, we do not have any chief guest or guest of honor, but we are joined by two very special guests. We have Mr. Jagdeep Singh's English teacher from Mayo College, whose way of teaching opened his mind to the beauty of literature. May I request Mr. Suresh Mathur to please come up here on the stage. He is also joined by Mr. Tilak Divekar, author of 4 acclaimed books on Pakistan, member of the National Security Advisory Board, and Mr. Jagdeep Singh's classmate from Mayo College. Sir, could we please have you on stage? I would also request Mr. Apurv Kumar, Managing Director of Clark's Group of Hotels, who's always been a great support to us, to please come up on the stage for officially launching the book. Ms. Soumya Kulshresht, who will be in conversation with the author today, and of course the author himself, Mr. Jagdeep Singh.
Let's hear it for the book.
Good morning, everyone. What a lovely venue we have for this launch. And I must tell myself that I better not let Jags down, and my English should be at least half as good as his is now. No, absolutely brilliant. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Jags, for inviting me and my wife to this launch. We were there for the previous one also, and you take me by surprise. We were sitting together yesterday over a drink, and he was so normal. I mean, he was talking like a good guy, very pleasant. And then when you read his poems, you find he can be totally different. So where did that come from? And how did that happen is what we would like to know. Please delve deep into that. And
100%.
100% of that. So it's delightful to know that 4 decades of Mayo boys are present here today. I'm 1961 batch. So I'm an old boy as well as a teacher from Mayo. And there's a 1971 batch, Jags and Tilak, and I don't know if there are any more from 71. are there. And then we have an 81, there's an 81 batch, young man there, and there's a 91 also. So there's a 91. So it's great to have you all here supporting this young man and his works. So I just go back to Mayo days and what kind of influence Mayo and boarding school life might have had on Jags and all the students from Mayo. Those years when he was in Mayo were 1969 to 71. I mean, you were there before that. But we came in touch in the English classroom for those 3 years. And it was also at that time that a new principal had arrived and taken over Mayo. That was Mr. Shomi Das. I don't know how many of you have heard of him. But he came in and shook the place up. He'd come straight from Gordonston, which was the school where King Charles went to school. And he was a young man of 38. He was only 38 years old then. And he came and took over from Mr. Gibson, who was old guard. And, he'd been there for many, many years. An amazing person, of course. And Mayo came a long way at that time. But then when Shomi Das came, new things happened. And I was told yesterday, one of the things I didn't know was told by Jags, actually, that some boys went up to Shomi Das and said, can we go for a shoot? This is at school. So, and Shomi said, yes, of course, for what? So they said, partridges? So Shomi Das, as a principal of a boarding school, very conservative boarding school in Ajmer, was willing to let students go for a shoot. And then somebody said, sir, that does not happen out here. So what I'm saying is that lots of new things were happening, new incidents, new permission. I was a teacher at that time, and I remember that we were surprised too about some of the things he brought in, and Jags must have benefited from them. Going out to the city on Sundays became quite open. At one time there was no permission to go. You were allowed to go maybe once in a term, but this time you could go anywhere. So we were also surprised about that. So things like that. I'm reminded about my school in England, where I was teaching. I was in a boarding school, and if a student was 18 years old, he could go to the pub with permission from the school, and he was allowed to smoke. But there was a little corner where he had to go and smoke. So strange things were happening all over the world, I suppose, and Mayo was a part of it, I guess. So what I'm trying to analyze is when Jags was going through this period with the new and the old, what sort of things might be going through his mind at that time? What sort of things were happening which have persisted and have evolved and grown up now? There was this old and young, new ideas were coming in. But I think we have to give Mayo its due. It made students think for themselves, question things, want to understand why, and go to the depth of it, and not to be afraid of having your beliefs and having the conviction to share them. And now this book, like we were just told, is like a autobiography in places. Yeah, it's talking about yourself, and very candidly he's telling what he felt, and I appreciate Jags for that. And like I said, I'm amazed every time I go through this book. Some of the lines which came to my mind were, our sweetest songs are those which tell of saddest thought. So there's some sadness, there's some pessimism, but our sweetest, right? This is from Shelley. Our sweetest songs are those which tell of saddest thought. Then another one which came to my mind, looking at him, is errors like straw upon the surface flow. Those who seek pearls must dive below. So in his writing, I think we find that there's so much pearl in your writing. Amazing. And the last one, again looking at you, Jags, it's a movie of 1958 titled run silent, run deep. I don't know if you remember that. Run silent, run deep. That's what you are to me. I did not expect that kind of depth and that kind of inclination in you, because like I said, you were a pretty normal guy last evening also when we were chatting. So you have taken me by surprise, but delighted about it. Thank you ever so much. I could go on and on. You know, once a teacher gets going, you have to tell him to get off. So thank you very much, and all the very best, and congratulations to you.
Thank you, sir, for that very evocative address. And now let me take a moment to formally introduce the author, though truth be told, he hardly needs one here in Jaipur. But as a daughter, I also do not get a chance to introduce him as an author, so I would not like to miss this rare opportunity. So Jagdeep Singh is a PR practitioner who runs his own firm in called Spark in Jaipur. A postgraduate in English and history, he has worn many hats: journalist, teacher, trainer, and through it all, a poet at heart. His poems have appeared in numerous journals and online portals. His first anthology, My Epitaph, received excellent reviews and was even shortlisted by the Journal of Commonwealth Literature for their bibliography of English poetry by Indian authors. It was listed as one of the most interesting debut collections of 2020-21. He also spent 3 years in Jakarta, Indonesia as the head of training for a leading retail company where his motivational lectures were much sought after. Currently, he is working on 2 new writing projects, a novella and a set of reminiscences about his alma mater, Mayo College, which celebrates 150 years this year. And now for the conversation, we have with us the incredibly talented Soumya Kulshresht. I met Soumya in 2023 in January in Delhi at a literature festival where we were both working. It was a 3-day-long festival and Soumya was moderating that festival. And by the end of it, I was so much in awe of her that I went up to her and told her how much I loved her work. And we exchanged numbers and we got connected on social media, and all this while we never really talked to each other, but there were random messages of appreciation in our DMs. And when my father asked me, who do you think would be the right person to be in conversation for this session, the first person that came to my mind was Soumya. And I sent her one message and she readily agreed to come here all the way from Dehradun for this session. So thank you so much, Soumya. Soumya is a writer, poet, educator, and communications specialist. In workshops, courses, and performances organized over the past many years, she has evangelized poetry as an art form everyone can understand and relate with. She is a well-recognized part of the events landscape, curating innovative experiences across several cities. She is currently the director of the Dehradun Literature Festival. Aside from curation, she performs, hosts, moderates, and is a well-known public speaker with 5 TEDx events to her credit. As an educator, she teaches poetry, mythology literature, and communications, and is an edtech expert. She is also a branding communications expert, working on projects for individuals and organizations. She consults for literary projects and publications and endeavors to read 100 books a year. And she lives in the mountains, hosting guests at her boutique mud house resort in Bir, Himachal Pradesh. And now, without any further ado, I would hand over to Soumya, who will take this conversation forward. Thank you.
Thank you. ऐसे स्टेज पे बुला के embarrass थोड़ी करना होता है. Welcome everyone. I think I travel the entire country and I can tell you Jaipur is the best dressed place I come to at all points of time. Sorry. And Jaipur is generally the best place that I can come to at any point of time. It's surreal, this setup. All of you and Jack sitting here and all of us talking about poetry, which even if you don't like, affects your lives in manners that you cannot envisage. एक हिंदी के कवि थे, कमलेश्वर नाम था शायद उनका, I might be wrong, but जिन्होंने ये कहा था कि कविता हृदय में कंघी करती है। अब ये एहसास क्या है, ये आप इंडिपेंडेंटली जान सकते हैं, क्योंकि आपके हृदय को जीवित तौर पे हाथ तो बहुत कम लोगों ने लगाया होगा. नॉट द चेस्ट, द हार्ट, द organ inside. कविता हृदय में कंघी करती है. But what do Jag's poems do? Do they tickle your heart? Do they scratch? Do they nudge? Do they prick? Is what we will recognize during the course of a conversation with him. There is one poem from, we would like to read several poems during the course of the day, but there's this one poem on page number 44 titled Life, and I think that's from where we'd like to begin this conversation. This poem says, it's prefigured well and truly, so don't even attempt to alter the narrative. Sure, you can pepper it up for fun, sheer fun of it. So come, let's saute the storyline with some crafty scheming, with some curated backstabbing, not to forget sheer cowardice. Now sprinkle liberally spices of pain. Now sprinkle liberally spices of pain, and finally add a dash, just a dash of pungent disease and deceit, and lo and behold, that's life for you. This is Jag's commentary on life. I do want to get to the source of, when you read these poems, there's a lot of social commentary. There are autobiographical sketches. I mean, all poetries contain parts of you that have not found expression, and hence these words and metaphors make them manifest. But in Jag's poetry, you find a lot of despondence, you find a lot of anger, you find a lot of vehemence, where words come together to craft a schema, which posits a lot of pain. There is deceit in this poem, and I would love to get to the source of all of it. However, what we just discovered about Jag's is it was in the year 1975 that his first poem was published. That is precisely 50 years ago from today. And maybe let's jump into that history and that journey. You were still writing love poetry at that point of time, if I'm not wrong.
Thank you very much, Soumya. Before I begin, I would just like to acknowledge, am I audible in the head? Yeah. Firstly, I will not be pronouncing a poem as a poem. For me, a poem is a poem. Yeah, but I have no hassle if anyone wants to pronounce it as a poem. Okay. Now, I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Apurv Kumar and the Clark's family for their great support always. Mr. Suresh Mathur, my former English teacher, for coming all the way from Ajmer. Mr. Tilak Deveshar, my batchmate, an author of so many books on Pakistan, and we have had him over in Jaipur for at least 3 of those discussions. Moderator Soumya ji, thanks for coming all the way from Dehradun. And last evening, she threatened me that she's going to ask me tough questions. I hope you'll be not so unkind. Professor Malashi Lal for writing an excellent foreword for my book. Kirti Sen Gupta, my publisher, Hawakal Publishers, who published my book in a record 3 weeks' time. Professor Rimika, are you around, Rimika? Yes. Please raise your hand. Yeah, Rimika. And Swati, are you here, Swati? Yeah, Swati Vashisht. Okay, so Rimika and Swati had gone through my typescript and given some very valuable suggestions. Thank you very much, Rimika. I would like to thank you all for coming on a Sunday morning to discuss poetry, and not to forget my family members, Tusharika, Pinky, Abhimanyu, and Tanmay, who's not been able to make it, always supporting me to write and get my poems published. They always say, don't just write poems anywhere and leave them around, Get them organized. They get irritated by seeing on a napkin or something like that, And my Spark PR family, who have to bear with my poems on a daily basis in the office. And so, yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. Even I didn't think of it. She just asked me, when did your first poem I wrote my first poem and it was published in a magazine called the Youth Times. It used to be brought out by the Times of India publication. Ladies and gentlemen, those times were great. A lot of magazines published poetry. Illustrated Weekly of India published poetry, Femina published poems, Youth Times published poems, JS Magazine published poems, Imprint published poems. There was a magazine called Sun, they published poem, and my poems got published in all of them, and now, except for Femina, all of them are closed. I can assure you, these magazines have not become defunct because they publish my poems, you know. So coming to my first poem, it was a typical, you know, you are in the class, MA English class, and it was like a Bollywood story actually. And there was this girl who became a good friend of mine, and I thought I started liking her, but she was liking someone else. And so she told me, can you be the mediator between him and her, you know. So I didn't have the heart to tell her that actually I like you. So I wrote my first poem. It was called, it was, you know, like William Butler Yeats at the age of 80 writes a poem again to Maud Gonne. After he's got married and lived a full married life, he writes to Maud Gonne that now that you are also old, and now that you look back on your life, I'm sure you're regretting that you did not marry me. So, well, anyway, so it was a poem called I Forget, I Forgive. So it was a poem about telling her that, I don't know, 50, you are just another insect being led by his crafty charm into his intricate web of affluence, of deceit, of lust. Don't tell me I didn't warn you. When repulsed with a soul and womb, don't ask for my shoulder to be, I forget the last line, it was something to, don't, you can always ask for my shoulder to weep on my love, you know, it was something like that. That was the ending. I'm forgetting the last 3-4 lines. So that was my first poem, exactly 50. I forget, I forgive, I forget. Yeah.
Wow. And when all of these poems were getting published across these periodicals, journals, is actually right. We used to look forward to these columns in newspapers when we were very young, and what amazing education it used to be. But at that point of time till now, when was the phase when you thought that, okay, now is the time that my book deserves to be published? How did my epitaph happen? And then we come to When Gods Don't Matter.
You know, it was funny that I was kept, when the Facebook came, when social media came, so I used to write a lot of poems in my diaries and they were there, and my published poems were there. So I would like to today remember, Sid, you are here, do you remember Tulika Haldar from Times of Jaipur Times? She used to be. So Tulika Haldar was one of the editors of Jaipur Times. When she left Jaipur, she started an online portal in 2017 on poetry, and she called me that, Jags, why don't you start sending me poems for your portal? So I started digging out my old poems and sending to them. It got published in the portals, it started getting, so it was around that time, and Tulika told me, so my last book, the last book in which I've acknowledged is Tulika for, you know, finally trying to get my poems together. And then I sent them to Writers' Workshop, Mr. P. Lal's Writers' Workshop, everyone knows. And but they took hell of a long time. They took almost a year to publish the poems. But it was after 2017 that I decided I would like to compile my poems into a book. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I'm sure I went through the epitaph last night and I absolutely loved the way words were strung together to create meanings that were absolutely grander than the sum total of those words. And I think what's the first thing that strikes you about this particular book is the title, When Gods Don't Matter. And I heard a lot of you discussing and commenting to Jax that this is a very curious title. It is slightly blasphemous, maybe completely rebellious, and it has an undertone of its own. And I believe this comes from a poem that was written during the COVID pandemic. Let's all read this poem together and then maybe inquire a little bit about it from Sir. 57 page number, When Gods Don't Matter. After a point, even prayers don't matter. And neither do the heap of life-saving medicines. The heartfelt wishes of the close ones bounce off the ventilator and lie scattered on the cold, hard, phenyl-washed ICU floor. What a beautiful stanza. We'll just like to read this again. The heartfelt wishes of the close ones bounce off the ventilator and lie scattered on the cold, hard, phenyl-washed ICU floor. The miffed gods, if you're around, heal right now. The miffed gods, if you're around, heal right now. For later, even you won't matter. What a beautiful poem.
Thank you.
We'd love to know more about the phase in which you compiled this particular book of poems, especially with reflection on the titular poem.
So, the COVID times were difficult times. I got COVID twice. My wife got COVID twice. It was during the second phase. And every day we were coming out with new things. That every day we read in the papers that someone was just walking and he dropped dead. His blood had curdled. Medicines were not impacting. And some of my, there was a very prominent, I would not like to name him, he was in one of the hospitals here. And I checked with his doctor, how is he? And he said, he's on the ventilator for last 10 days. And he might remain on the ventilator for another couple of weeks. But I don't think he'll make it. Just keep it to yourself, the doctor told me, but I don't think he'll make it. And sure enough, he passed. So we hearing all these. Some of my dear friends passed away, near and dear ones went away. In Jaipur itself, some very prominent theatre personalities, writers, and well-known personas of the city, they all left. So it was during one of these phases, कि करना है तो अब करो, फिर क्या फायदा, मतलब, if you want to miff gods, you got to do it now. Otherwise, then even you won't matter. And I think he did something because within a few days things started improving. Yeah.
Well, I think it behooves of a poet to challenge the authority of God also and say that, you're not doing enough. If you exist, please show your existence. Otherwise, now is the time. Otherwise, what's the point? I mean, when so much despair fills around. I remember there was this interview between Anupam Kher Sahab and Gulzar Sahab in which Anupam ji asked Gulzar Sahab that, is it true that poets can only write when they are sad? Like happiness pe koi poem nahi hoti. And I was thinking about it because when you read the preface which Jags has written, he says, I apologize that there are no light-hearted poems in here. Alright, there are poems of only despair. And Gulzar Sahab gives a very curious answer to it. He says that खुशी जो है वो फुलझड़ी की तरह जलती है और दुख या गम अगरबत्ती की तरह जलता है, वो अपनी महक फैलाते रहता है. But I think what Jags does is that he takes it one notch higher. It doesn't end at despair. There is a challenge. There is a certain vehemence of language. There is, you're not ending at dukh or at sorrow. There is pain, there is deceit, there is anger, there is disillusionment. And when I meet Jags, he's such a gentle person. Like one doesn't understand where do all of these sentiments alight from in his poems. So Jags, where is the theme and content for all of these poems coming in from?
So you'll be surprised that there are a variety of themes. Now, if you might say, there is a poem in which I'm angry at insomnia, and I will say I'll one day kill it and maim it. There is a phase in the contemporary times. Firstly, I would like to say that you can write a poem on any topic that moves you, you can write. There is no line, there is no thing that you can't write. I think T.S. Eliot or Ezra Pound would be shocked to see the kind of poetry that is being written these days. There were classicist poems, and they had said, like, there has to be a line. You can't cross that line. Now that line has been crossed many times over. So, my different poems, if you talk about my anger and vehemence, it's about different things. On insomnia, I'm getting angry, why can't I go to sleep? And I'm telling her, my doctor said take a sleeping pill, or what I advise is just get up at 3 in the morning when you wake up and do anything that you feel like. And read a book, see a movie, relax, do anything, and sleep will come by itself. But if you start taking the sleeping pill, it's addictive. So you'll be surprised that it was at 3 a.m. There was a phase, it's gone now, when I used to get up, and there was always a seed of a poem, which starts germinating. And it was that time in the morning I used to start thinking of developing that seed into a poem. I would keep lying, I was not tossing or turning, I was focused, and lo and behold, a poem would emerge, like with commas and full stops. I would never get up and write them. But when I finally drifted back to sleep around 5:36, when I got up in 8:30, then I would go and whatever remained of it, I would then write it down. So my anger is not only on one thing, it's on different kind of things, And yesterday you were asking me about a poem called Hawking Love. If someone asked me, what would you like to sell? What would you like to hawk? I said, I would like to hawk love. I would like to spread cheer, love and brotherhood, looking at what is happening, the divide that is happening, the sectarian differences that have taken place in our country. So I said, this is a poem which is thing. So I'm angry at a certain situation writing. I'm looking for brotherhood, I'm trying to promote. So on and so forth. There are so different angles and different perspectives. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Hawking Love was another interesting poem. कि आप love बेचने क्यों निकले हैं? And उसमें किस तरह के mixings करने? It's a short poem. With your permission, may I just read it as well? He says, if I could, this is page number 35 for those who want to read along. If I could, I would hawk love. I could even add to it peace and quietude and deftly mix it. The hurrah would be if I could add brotherhood, put brotherhood to the concoction. If I could, I would hawk love and I would peddle it like mad, peddle it like mad, peddle it like mad. I think poets are blessed with this extra sensitive hearts, right? It was Keats. Yes, can we hear it for Jags and the poem?
Thank you.
It was Keats who said that poets have something called negative capability. I don't know how many people remember it, but they're able to apprehend the world and look at things that maybe do not touch the heart of an average person. But a sensitive heart like that of Jags does register it. There was this other poem in which, it's called The Flash. Okay, it's on page number 28, in which Jags evokes the imagery of Buddha and says that the wisdom that I have found of Buddha is that hatred is not enough. That hatred is not enough, it has to be intense, it has to be vicious, it has to be even vengeful. The sense of vengeance, the sense of anger, I'm going to go back to it because it does repeat. It does repeat its presence, and part of this anger is towards, say, what's happening in the society. But does it germinate from anywhere else as well?
No, see, like yesterday we discussed this, that there is a bit of contradiction in this poem. On the one hand, I'm talking about Buddha-like flash of wisdom. And she said, when you're talking about Buddha, we would think that you were talking about peace and love. But the next stanza is talking about hatred. So that poem, it is a vindictive poem. I was thinking about someone and, how to tackle. There is also a poem how you can sort of, nursing a grudge. And it says that when you're in business, when you other things, you have opponents. And so that poem was written that suddenly, like you get up in the night, and I said, I'm not showing enough hatred. I'm not showing enough anger. I'm not showing my real eyes, to this person. So I wrote Buddha-like flash of wisdom, But then it became, yes, I should be stronger, I should be more vicious, I should show more. That was the idea. But I agree with you, there is a contradiction in this poem, and it can happen. As famous American poet Walt Whitman said, do I contradict myself? I do. I am large. I contain multitudes.
How wonderfully answered. And I think for an imagery like that of Buddha to be redone on the pages of a poem talks a lot about the potential of the poet and the kind of creative imagination that he's constantly employing to stump his readers, that you understand, okay, maybe this poem is going towards some kind of a resolution, but it leads you in a completely different direction. I think it's a testament to maybe how Mathurji taught, sir, but there is a lot of invocation of very many different poets in this particular book. There is Yeats, there is Eliot, there is Samuel Taylor Coleridge, there is Jean-Paul Sartre, right? And if you had to remarkably pick out one poet whose works have informed and affected yours in a very big way, who would that be? Which English poet?
Very easily I can say two poets. T.S. Eliot is one, of course. There's a poem in this called Infertility, which is dedicated to him. Starting from the wasteland. Like in my insomnia years, I used to read out when I got up. There's one poem I read out loudly, which I love reading even now, is The Wasteland. And Wasteland, Eliot had a great impact on me. And not only his poetry, but his critical essays, critical writings. And later on, Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath was, Eliot would have been shocked at Sylvia Plath. Yeah. The kind of confessional poetry that she was writing. So in my last anthology, I have a poem written for Sylvia Plath on why she committed suicide at the age of 30. And what a remarkable waste of life and talent. And in this anthology also, I have a poem dedicated to T.S. Eliot and unwritten verses for Sylvia Plath. These two poets had great impact on me.
Wonderful. The poem that Sir is referring to on T.S. Eliot, where he says with apologies to T.S. Eliot, is on page number 39. It's called Infertility, and like Sir said, it alludes to the first part of The Wasteland.
Yeah,
is it?
First part of The Wasteland. The lines are very similar, but I keep giving it a twist. And in the end, there's another twist where Eliot always said, death can undo, and I said, life also does. Life can also undo.
That is remarkable, this very categorical twist at the end, which completely inverts the meaning. Let's read this together. In vain do I search. In vain do I search for the sprouts of the planted corpses. All that I've found is a heap of broken images. Zombie-like I walk, neither dead nor alive. Zombie-like I walk, neither dead nor alive. Meanwhile the sun beats and beats hard on the dry, barren earth. I would, if I could, stir the dull roots. She laughed mockingly loud, the hyacinth girl. She laughed mockingly loud, the hyacinth girl. Frenziedly I searched for the red sock and its shade. You said death can undo. I'd say even life does, and life does. What a remarkable piece of poem. Can we also ask you a little bit about the form and structure that you use in these poems?
So, each of these poems has been revised at least 50 times. And I don't think I've left any superfluous word in it or a punctuation mark. Malashri Lalji, when she read my poetry, the first thing she said, Jags, your poems are so tightly structured, I'm amazed. So they've gone through them, and like I said, I used to read Wasteland a lot, and once I was reading the first page and I thought, well, it's developing into a poem. And it doesn't say zombie-like, I'm walking half dead, neither dead nor alive. He's not writing that in waistline. That's my addition to that lines. The end is my twist. But while going through it, I felt like I could develop this using his lines into a new meaning, into a new poem. And that's why I say it's apologies to Eliot, because I've used his lines.
Absolutely. And again, I think I think when there is a very learned poet sitting in front of you, it reflects through the lines that he is writing. There are critical allusions, there is mention of other people. I think it's famously said about Eliot that the annotations of The Wasteland are longer than the poem itself. And to understand that poem, you have to have so much knowledge of, I don't know what all, maybe biblical mythology, Greek mythology, Upanishads as well. And sometimes while reading poems in this book, I had to Google a little about Maud Gonne. I had to Google and understand, okay, otherwise that poem will not make sense. And a poem that makes you work hard on understanding it is a well-written poem, right? I mean, if you work hard on understanding a piece of writing, imagine the amount of hard work that would have gone into creating that piece of writing itself. And very remarkably beautiful structural innovations are also present in the book. Usually the structure is fluid, it is free verse, it is a thought flow that even a reader can flow along with your poems. Now when it comes to this particular book, which is perhaps the most autobiographical of the poems that are there, which poem tells me the most about Jags?
Let me see, I can't immediately think of it. Yeah, I'd like to, I've written a poem about my father, Hey Dad, So that is a relationship poem. Yeah, so I think I would like to, it also has, if a reader can discern, it also has an ending which that we'd like to meet soon, something that gives a... Page 25. It was written for my father. So on his...
Page 23.
I have a long... my father was in the army, but he was very fond of the railways. And the only, apart from his course books for getting promotions in the army, I don't think he ever read any book, but he had a passion for railway timetables. And you would always find him reading a railway timetable. And railway timetables are divided into different zones, north, south, east, west. He would have all the zones. Then he would have the combined of all the zones. And then there was a private timetable called Bradshaw, if you heard of that. Bradshaw used to have a railway. And railway timetables also have rules and regulations. He was well versed, For instance, if he was posted in East and we were coming to Jaipur as a family of 4 people, we would get a compartment of 4 old first-class compartments, standalone. And he would carry his ice box with his beer and things. And he knew that you could break journey after 250 kilometers. And he knew that if you sent a money order to the station master, your retiring room could be booked. So you sent a 5 rupee money order and the next station. And he says if we can break journey after 250 kilometers, why not? So if you're coming 800 kilometers, make us break 3 times. Because he knew all the rules, So it's remembering that, and it also gives us things about railways and things, and how he has taught me a card trick which I've forgotten. I used to wow a lot of people with that card trick, suddenly I've forgotten. So can I read this?
I would read the poem. It's on page number 23. It's called Hey Dad, written on his birth anniversary. It's been so long. It's been so long since you went away that I shared the earlier FB post written on your birthday. Each year, guess what? Even that garnered 50 likes today. I wrote about your love for the trains and the retiring rooms and your favorite railway mutton curry and that how you preferred reading timetables to thrillers or memoirs. Not to forget the chilled beer that you carried in the icebox in the standalone first class compartments. I guess you preferred the train journey more than reaching the destination. A soldier and a gentleman, you were soft at heart with small happenings giving you immense pleasure. When my first poem was published in JS, you went showing the mag to one and everyone, much to my embarrassment. Hey dad, remember the card trick you taught me? It wowed for so many years. I have suddenly forgotten it. It just got erased, wiped clean, just like that. The age factor, I guess. I too look forward to you teaching me once again that magical card trick over a glass of beer whenever, wherever.
So, if a reader can discern from these poems, this poem is the ending. It's also, we are at that phase of life where we would be a liar if we don't think about death. You know, that's the time. There is a poem, it's the end that, hey dad, I would like to meet you soon. You know, like, it's giving a end which some people, readers might miss. There is another poem of mine, Clean Slate, that I am letting go of things and I would like to leave with a clean slate, nothing to take, nothing to give. So there are these references to how, and there is a poem that I'm suffering from various kinds of things, and as I walk into the sunset, so there is this element of poetry.
And I think anger in your poems was better than despair, because this particular poem, even when I was reading, there was this, I at least had the sense of this little bit of sorrow washing over my entire body till the time it sort of ended. And I do know that topics like death are difficult to discuss, but poets are brave that way. Poets will not shy away from taking on the most taboo, the most difficult, the most jarring, the most risky topic, and saying that, hey, this is what I think about it, and you jolly well listen. What would you like for your readers to take away from When Gods Don't Matter?
You know, frankly, when I write my poems, I don't have the readers in my mind. You know, I'm writing for myself what I feel strangely, but it would be, I end my preface by writing that I hope the readers will find my poems vivid and stimulating at the same time. But what I would like my readers to take away from is the wide variety of verses that are there. There is about, even undergoing a stenting procedure can become a poem, and I've written one, Cat Lapped, but you have to see the twists in the end of my verses. Cat Lapped, someone will say he's undergoing a stenting procedure, but then I give heart another dimension in the end, that heart is also about. Malashri Lal rang me up to say she loved this poem so much that even, you know, resuscitate, rejuvenate I've written for, you know, once you get and the blood starts flowing. But my ending of the poem is that heart can also break, it can mope, but it can also love, it can bring sunshine, it can bring hope. So it ends on a very positive note, yeah. So that's a...
Yeah, and Cat Lapped is a very interesting poem. In fact, it's lovely the way love and heart makes ways to enter Jags's poems, because somewhere love is a tool for a kind of a social revolution, a quiet social revolution, and somewhere heart becomes a canvas for saying that, hey, despite this anger and despair and everything in between, I am a human at the end of this all. I would read this poem and then maybe I'll come to the audience for some questions in case you would like to ask Jags, right? Cat Lapped is on page number 19. The heart has its reasons. With the right wrist strapped tight to the surgical table and the computer monitor staring down hard at me as if I were an errant schoolboy, I remain immobilized. The other arm has this drip, drip, drip dripping into me with monotonous regularity. The oximeter affixed on an index finger is so reminiscent of the COVID time. The doc says ever so gently, just a prick of a needle. I nod okay. The die courses through with gay abandon, and the computer monitor suddenly goes crazy from here to there, from there to here, and then comes a mammoth block, and then another. The block, comprising not only of cholesterol but all excesses, is bulldozed by merely a balloon. The drug-eluting mesh stents come to the rescue as the artery once again gets inundated with lifeblood to resuscitate, to rejuvenate. Now, who was it who said the heart has its reasons? Sure it does. Sure it does, to sulk, to mope, even to break, but also to spread joy and cheer and even love and sunshine and even love and sunshine. What a wonderfully written poem.
Thank you.
And the way it waves through different kinds of emotional troughs and crests, right? I would like to just check if anyone in the audience has anything to ask Jax about this book, about his life. Yes, we have a question there. I would give you my mic.
एक mic होगा.
Hello everyone. Jax, I have a question, which is, I see so many emotions, such a tsunami of emotions and different level of emotions and different sizes and different types. How do you remain so calm in spite of having a volcano inside you? That's my question.
Well, this is exactly what Mr. Mathur was saying, that he was totally normal last evening. But when I read his poems, I get very fine. But I guess it comes, when you experience. Idea is not to show your anger or, other kinds of emotions. Another question a lot of people ask me, because I have a busy life, we are doing events, morning to night we are doing events. A lot of people ask me, where do you find time to write poetry, And so one I would say that I have this uncanny knack of remaining calm with the volcano inside.
Beautiful. I think for a person who's dedicated so much of his life to helping others find words, it is a keen sense that you would obviously possess for yourself. Lovely. We have a question here.
जैक्स, मैं आपको हिंदी में सवाल करना चाहता हूँ
जी जी।
कि आपने हिंदी कविता नहीं पढ़ी क्या?
मैं हिंदी में 33 पासिंग मार्क्स होते थे, 34 आए थे मेरे.
क्या बात है? Do we have any more questions? Yes.
अफसोस हुआ मुझे.
नहीं, मैं भी नहीं, लेकिन on a more serious note, I would like to, I've attended the Mushairas and Kavi Sammelans, and I do appreciate Hindi poetry, but I don't think I can write Hindi poetry.
We have another question from Mio coming here.
So Jack, this question is with the permission of the lady, Pinky ma'am ke permission se. So how many women have, kind of given you that thing to poems? Because we just heard of the one lady who kind of didn't come to your heart. But how many other women, if you would like to reveal that?
Thank you for asking a question I couldn't.
Well, as I talked about William Butler Yeats, women can be your creative things, but I will tell you separately how many women.
And I think, again, for all of us saying that, how emotionally stable Jags appears, but there is love and softness clearly lacking from his poems, I will get that question. There is a wonderful poem, a very well-informed poem on the last page of the book called On Writing a Modern Verse, where he says, they said, treat the subject directly. For those of you who are aficionados of modernist poetry, this poem is going to make so much sense. They said, treat the subject directly. Don't go roundabout, and that introduced fresh, unadorned imagery. I said, fine. They said, avoid verbal riddles and forge a style not overwrought, but one that is coherent. I said, fine. and asked if I could add disillusionment, even world-weariness. They said fine, but then they said to avoid love and emotion, mushy nostalgia, feel-good euphoria, and I said, no way, no way, no way. So there is a very direct insistence that Jags has that no, love and softness and emotion and heart. Without that, poetry cannot be written. We have one question on this side. Tusharika, is it yes?
Jack,
Yeah, Rajiv.
Jack, I discern three trends in your poetry. One is the iceberg style, where 1/9 is what you say, and 8/9 is what we have to discern and imagine. The second trend I found was something like what metaphysical poets like John Donne used to do. This is yoking together heterogeneous ideas into a very harmonious whole. That again ignites the minds of the reader. The third is some bits of stream of consciousness where your thoughts go, they jump from one image to the other. And by the way, and incidentally, the imagery in your poetry, I find they have illusions right from Augustine age to romantic poets, and of course T.S. Eliot and W.B. Yeats. Now talking of W.B. Yeats, I just reminded me, Maud Gonne was gone obviously when she married this Irish patriot who died, and she refused him thrice. And obviously when he says that I'm going old with you and all, but lastly about T.S. Eliot, I just wanted to make out one point. Maybe you have also read his drama called Murder in the Cathedral.
Yes, yeah.
And there, he is not so economical with his words. For example, when these knights are coming to kill the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he says, unbar the doors, throw open the doors. I will not have the house of prayer, the Church of Christ, the sanctuary turned into a fortress. So similarly, but as you say, T.S. Eliot has been one of the favorite poets, and your poetry also, it mixes memories with desires, and the dull roots with the spring rains. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful, Mr. I would like to tell you, Mr. Rajiv Sai, former of the civil services, I've always shared my poems on the social media, and he's the one who always makes very positive and wise comments on my poetry. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you.
We have another question from here.
It's not a question, Jax, but it's a beautiful session, I must say.
Thank you, Tim.
Soumya. But I said, here it all proves that still waters run deep.
Wonderful, thank you.
Brilliant job, Soumya. Thank you, Jax, for actually Charika for making this choice, because the session is as good as the moderator.
We need to be able to see you, please.
Well, thank you very much, because a good session is dependent on the moderator, because you've done your job. Thank you very much. But then she brought it alive. So much is being talked about Maud Gonne. May I also remind the audience that in another poem, Yeats does talk about how wise women eat a crazy salad with their meat. So maybe in not accepting Yeats over 3 times of the proposals that he made, she did indeed eat that crazy salad with her meat. Anyway, that's that. I was wondering, Jags, after all this soul searching, does Anthology 3.0, can Anthology 3.0 promise to be a little bit of the light banter that your conversations are mostly all about? I mean, they run deep, but then they're light-hearted banter. I mean, whoever's had a good time with Jags on any of the evenings over a drink knows he's all about light-hearted banter, but it's not frivolous and it's not trivial. So maybe Anthology 3.0, something for you to comment.
Well, I haven't thought about the Anthology 3.0 right now, but let's see how it pans out. Currently, I'm working on a novella and something about reminiscences about my school, and let's see how the poems develop. Maybe after a couple of years, we'll have another session here, thanks to Timmy and Apoorv.
I don't think it'll take a couple of years. I'm hoping that the session happens really, really, really soon. And if I could just intervene and ask, what is the thematic of the novella? How dark is that going to be?
So, it's a love story. And it's a short love story. and it ends positively.
Wow, that is some relief to hear. Next question. We have one at the back also.
Hello, ma'am. Hi, Jags. Congratulations
Hi,
for
Dhruva.
yet again a beautiful book. I have yet to read it, but from what I heard, it sounds really, really inviting. I just wanted to ask you one thing. Like modern Art Deco, your poems, your writings have all their corners and their edges, and yet they are so sublime. How do you maintain that?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that they have edges and they are still sublime. But like I said, Wordsworth said, spontaneous overflow, powerful emotion. My poems, once they are, there is a poem on about like a serpent, if you can read. So once I've written a poem, I revise them a lot. I go through it a lot, and I try and leave nothing. But there is also how a thought for writing a poem comes, and I've written a poem on this second last. Please. The theme, how a poem in my mind gets into, how does it get finally affixed on the paper. That will answer you.
Page number 76, the verse. When I have nothing better to do, I often attempt a poem, a verse. The theme does get final, but the words, they move as frenetically as a slithering snake's tail would do, whose head has been crushed under my foot. God फरमाइए इस imagery पर. The theme does get final, but the words, they move as frenetically as a slithering snake's tail would do, whose head has been crushed under my foot. When the tail finally stops moving, I know the poem is ready to be affixed on paper. That is probably the closest of how Jags would communicate his creative process to all of you. A slithering snail, a tail, the head under your foot, and when it stops slithering, why does it stop slithering? Is for something all of us can think about. I do think poems are, the language of poetry exists above the language of tangibility, the language of one-on-one communication, but the meanings hide 6 feet deeper within those layers. So you are playing so much with the way words come together to concoct a meaning that may not even have been intended by the writer, by the poet. It's what you make out of it because you become a part of that poem. And there were so many poems here that I could locate myself as well. And that is saying a big compliment to the poet, right? And once I would like for you all to put your hands together because people are shy of putting these kind of images out. But for a poet and an author to be raw and to be honest and to be out there on paper for permanence is another degree of bravery altogether. Do we have any more questions? We have one on this side, the Sharika.
Heartiest congratulations, Jags, and Soumya, you did a fab job. I think a poetry reaches your heart by the way you recite it. So that's very important. Jags, I feel your poetry is very poignant, eloquent, and melancholic. And somewhere I think I was just brushing through this. And do I take the permission of just reading something which just touched my heart?
Please
do
do,
I have the permission? Scars are forever. Life is about those random acts of silliness, like stubbing a cigarette butt on the wrist just to prove my love. She had walked away in utter disgust. Coming across her some 40 years later, she checked on my wrist. If the scar was still there, it was this time. Beautiful. I think somewhere it touches you deep down. I think I just have one word for your poetry because it's like soulful. Thank you so much for giving us such.
I was hoping people wouldn't notice this poem.
And I think I just tapped on the right one.
I have to say something. So this is on page number 59. It's a significantly beautiful poem and it ends on the next page and it inverts. Yes. So I remembered it. So the point till which she read was, Then she tapped on my wrist to check if the scar was still there, and sure, it was. But this time she gently patted it, looked for long moments deep in my eyes, and even gave a hint of a smile. And then she walked away once again. I love this poem. And then she walked away once again in the August rain, her long silver grey tresses billowing in the wind. Scars remain forever. But you don't know which scars are being talked about now.
Beautiful.
Thank you for bringing up that poem.
Thank you so much.
We have another question in the front here.
What a wonderful way to spend a Sunday morning. Thank you, both of you, for such an enlightening and rejuvenating and rebooting, as it were, session.
Thank you, Mita.
Yes. The poem about the railway compartment that you've written, it resonates so much with anyone who's been associated with army postings as a former army officer. It was almost reliving a sense of deja vu. The second thing I want to say is that you write, and it's like still waters run deep, as Timmy said, but do you write with pen and ink, or do you type it onto your mobile or your laptop?
No, I write with my pen and ink, and you'll be surprised that my Spark team finalizes it. I give them that piece over, they type it for, and then they WhatsApp and they make the changes. So my heartfelt thanks to my Spark team for bearing with me and sometimes even suggesting there could be a change in or a punctuation mark.
So the grateful thanks go to both of you and the Spark team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, maybe?
Okay, if there are any more questions, I'm here. We can further discuss. And ladies and gentlemen,
not a question. I just wanted to. Not a question. I just wanted to say how delightful the whole event has been, and you are a brilliant writer. You're an enigma of sorts at times, but we love you for that, and you did a great job. And thank you for having us here today.
Thank you so much. I would like to just tell you that for Mr. Suresh Mathur, I was just narrating the incident yesterday that, ours was the first batch of CBSE, and the course that was given to us for CBSE Core English, it was to be done in 3 years. The 3-year course was prescribed to us, and Mr. Mathur had finished it in a year and a half. We still had. Then he said, let's revise it again. And he revised it in another 3-4 months, or maybe 6 months. We still had a year to go. This is where the genesis of my love for literature began. And Mr. Mathur took permission from the school management to start elective English. And elective English, we had Shakespeare, we had Merchant of Venice, A Man for All Seasons, Animal Farm, poetry of D.H. Lawrence, which Mr. Mathur taught us so effectively that my love for literature, it was at that time that the 6 years of my 6-7 years that I taught English literature in Xavier's are the best years of my life. Easily. And that is the love for the literature. I would also like to thank all of you for being here on a Sunday morning, but also the august professors of literature, Rajul ji, Mini Nandaji, Rimika and Sudha Rai-ji. They are all well-known professors of English. I wish one of you would have asked a question, but nevertheless.
Can I take one question? Yes, let's take a question.
After this, after this question, please proceed for tea and snacks.
Just a little observation. I see a lot of the train in your poems. The train journey. As a matter of fact, the metaphor of journey itself is very evident from Wagah border to the last page. Um, I just wanted to suggest that those of you who would read this should look into the tunnel through which you pass, and at the end of it, the rose garden that you reach.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
I had an observation too, because you said you were deeply influenced by T.S. Eliot and Sylvia Plath. So when the poem was read on Hey Daddy, was it?
Hey Dad.
Yes. So Hey Dad, that is actually in contrast to what Sylvia Plath is writing in Daddy. I like that change, because Sylvia Plath is so full of angst and sadness and anguish.
Yeah.
Anguish.
It also has the Electra complex.
Yes.
And here you have something that is so pure and that needs to connect and the hope to meet again. So I like the reworking and how you have reshaped your thoughts from your readings and your found,
Thank you so much, Mini. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Jagdeep.
Sudhir.
Just wonderful to be here and to have various crevices in one's own heart opened up. Right. My question really is, the title of your collection is When Gods Don't Matter. So, could I just ask you whether you're also pondering about which gods do matter in terms of anchors of any form of faith?
When gods, that was the COVID poem where I
got that completely. I mean, that context was absolutely, it came across marvelously.
No, I'm not having a particular god in mind. Yeah.
Not even a particular god, it could be any anchors, you see, which allow you to strengthen yourself as a poet.
Which I haven't thought about it.
All right.